Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bachelors of the Bible. I'm Brandon Weaver. Thank you for joining me as this is a special week. This is the first week of our final 3 weekly devotionals that I'm going to be doing with you guys online. Now, I will tell you here in a couple of weeks about just what our plans are moving forward. But for today, we're going to be looking at something completely different from any of the other stories that we have read or heard in this series. This week, we're going to be looking at the Apostle Paul. And you may be saying to yourself, Paul, I don't remember him getting married in the Bible. Well, you're right, he did. This week, we're looking at singleness and why we shouldn't think of it as being some sort of curse on our life. So have you ever broken up with someone or had someone tell you, God's going to have someone great for you someday? I know that I have been told that line I don't know how many times. The fact is, people are trying to soften that blow, trying to console you, whether it is a family member or friend after you've been broken up with, or maybe you've told that line to someone that you are breaking up with. The fact is, it hurts. Now, I'm going to say something that very few people will ever tell you or will ever say to anyone. And that is, not everyone gets married. And I can say that telling someone that God has someone great for them isn't something that I've ever told any of my students. And the reason is simply this: I don't know what God has for you. I'm hoping and I pray that God does great things in your life and that He will lead somebody special into your life one day. Somebody that you can have an incredible life together, an incredible family together, to be able to serve God and do great things for Him. But I don't know the future. And just like none of us know when or how we're going to pass on from this world to the next, we don't know what the future holds. The fact is, when I was in high school, at this point in my life, I would have thought that I would have been married, would have had kids, would have been a head football coach somewhere and running an athletic department. But instead, my life changed. And I have been building houses for the last umpteen years. I have never been married, never had kids, and here over the last year, I've been you guys' youth director, trying to figure out how to best minister to you guys through the middle of the worst pandemic that we have seen in at least 100 years. Simply put, no one knows what life has for us. So today I want to talk to you guys about this misconception that's out there that so many students and really adults have about being single. Now, especially when you're in junior high and high school and really even in college as well, so many students feel pressure to get into or be in a relationship. And a lot of times they feel like maybe there's some sort of a freak or a misfit or an outcast or a loser if they aren't in a relationship, and especially if they see all or most of their friends in a relationship. But those feelings may be natural, but they're not truthful. The fact is, having a girlfriend or a boyfriend isn't the end all be all that we have this tendency to make it out to be. There are a lot of things that go on in relationships that we don't think about when we're not in one. We forget about the difficulties that there are when two people have two different opinions and start to come into conflict with things. It happens. There's a lot of different things that happen. And most of the not truthful feelings, they don't take into account the whole picture of life. Take, for example, that we all grow and mature at different rates. Being the oldest kid in your class versus being the youngest kid in your class can make all the difference in the world when it comes to really a lot of things in school, but especially dating and relationships. So take me for an example. I wasn't the youngest kid in my class, but I was pretty close. And while most of the guys were going through their senior year of football as either late 17-year-olds, almost 18, or guys that were 18, and some were 18, almost 19, and some guys were even 19. I was 16, and I didn't turn 17 until the week before our first game. And just having that one more year would have helped me to mature both in my body and in my mind. And I understand now, looking back, where I was a lousy student as an elementary kid. And part of the reason why I was a lousy student was I was just young. And so there was some things that I had a hard time comprehending until something just clicked when I was in third grade and things started to make sense. But had I been able to start at school a year later, maybe the stuff would have clicked a little bit better in first and second grade. But in saying that, while most of my friends in my class were in relationships, some were in serious, including my best friend, I was sitting at the house on the weekends and I was playing NCAA football. And I was playing Madden on Genesis because I didn't have a driver's license. In fact, I didn't have a driver's license until almost the end of my junior year. And really, I felt out of place within my class because I would come to school on Monday morning and I would hear about all the things that my friends had done over the weekend. And I just felt like such a loser, but it was simply because I was so much younger than those guys. As I've grown older, I've come to realize that being single is okay, especially when you're in school. So whether you're in school or you've graduated, singleness has this place and time in every one of our lives. And believe it or not, there are advantages to being single. That brings us to the Apostle Paul. So you remember Paul's story, right? When we first met Paul, he was known as Saul. And he was giving approval at the death of Stephen, the stoning of Stephen, the first martyr in the New Testament. And from there, he continues to persecute the early church. And one day, Saul goes to the high priest and he seeks permission to go from Jerusalem to Damascus to be able to go and arrest any man or woman that was simply committing the crime of worshiping Jesus. That's a shame, right? On his way there, a bright light blinded Saul. And Jesus spoke to him, asking Saul, saying, "Why are you persecuting me?" When he says this, he was talking about all of the people in the church that Saul was ruthlessly committing crimes against, really. And from there, Saul repented of his sins. He changed his life because he finally understood who Jesus is and understood all of the things that he had read in the Old Testament scripture, because Saul was a very learned and educated man, that he would have been at the top level of those that knew, understood, and taught the Torah, which is the Old Testament, all of these different things. And so he finally realizes who Jesus is. His life is changed, and because his life is changed, Saul changes his name to Paul, because he never wants to go back to that life. And as a new convert, Paul very quickly starts preaching the gospel, even risking his life to do so. And he goes around and he plants churches, and he preaches in Jerusalem, the very place where he had been persecuting Christians. He now risked his own life by preaching the gospel there. But he also went everywhere that he could in the known world. He went on many missionary journeys, telling people about Jesus and what he had done for them. And he wrote much of what we consider the New Testament. And so we find here in the book of 1 Corinthians, Paul addresses the subject of relationships. Now, the Corinthian church was at a place where they needed some clarification on things, because unfortunately there had been worldly perspectives and false teachings that had made their way into the church. And so Paul was initially writing this letter to the Corinthians, where somewhere in the writing of this letter, he actually got another letter from the Corinthians asking him to address some other things that were going on in the church. And so Paul is addressing all of these different issues, trying to help them better understand and to be more of the Christians that God called us to be. And so we're going to look starting at 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 7 through 9. They say, "I wish that all people were as I am, but each has his own gift from God. One person has this gift, another has that. I say to the unmarried and to the widows, it is good for them if they remain as I am. But if they do not have self-control, they should marry, since it is better to marry than to burn with desire." So in these verses, we see Paul gives his perspective on this gift that he has. And it's in regards to singleness. And in this particular section of 1 Corinthians, Paul is talking about lust and sex outside of marriage. And here he's talking about how he has this gift to not burn with desire when it comes to lust or sex, but rather he is able to control those thoughts, control those feelings, control those urges without giving in to them. He understood that not everyone had that gift. And so he says for those people, it's better for them to find a spouse. Not that this is or should be the only reason to get married, but it is a reason for people to consider marriage. He goes on in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 26 through 28 and 32 through 35 to really go into this discussion of why he thought singleness was better than marriage, which is going to sound completely strange and foreign to us, but yet here's what Paul has to say. "Because of the present distress, I think that it is good for a man to remain as he is. Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek to be released. Are you released from a wife? Do not seek a wife. However, if you do get married, you have not sinned. And if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. But such people will have trouble in this life. And I am trying to spare you. I want you to be without concerns. The unmarried man is concerned about the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But the married man is concerned about the things of the world, how he pleases his wife, and his interests are divided. The unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the things of the Lord, so that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But the married woman is concerned about the things of the world and how she may please her husband. I am saying this for your own benefit, not to put a restraint on you, but to promote what is proper, and so that you may be devoted to the Lord without distraction. So here we read Paul's case of why he feels singleness is better. His main point is that when two Christians get married, their focus in life changes. And when we're single, we're able to focus on the things of God and serving Him first and foremost. However, the tendency is that once you're in a relationship, that focus changes. And it now becomes, how do I make my spouse and children happy? How can I take care of them? What do I have to do today for them? And he ends verse 35 by saying this, so that we could be devoted to the Lord without distraction. Paul understood that when people get into relationships, there are all kinds of distractions that will come up in their life. And so the more distracted you are, the less you can focus on the Lord, or for that matter, anything else in life. I want to tell you guys about something that I did last year. This is something that Kevin Taylor actually got me in just right before the world shut down. He got me involved in this group on Instagram called Kelly's Corner, and it's a group of single Christians that are trying to find their soulmate, but they're trying to find their soulmate, but at the same time, they're drawing encouragement from one another. That while they're single, they see other singles that are still serving God, and that they're not alone. Because a lot of times when you get to become an adult and you're not married and you see all of your friends and family married, you get discouraged. But here, you can find some encouragement. And from this experience, what I have seen are some really amazing and interesting people that have done some truly incredible things with their life in serving God in their singleness, because they weren't tied down to family and a marriage. And whether it was a short-term or long-term overseas mission trip, or just doing missions here in the United States, some of them were just highly involved in their home churches, and even a lot of them were involved in sharing their faith by serving in their local communities. These are the kinds of people, and these are the kinds of things that Paul was writing about when he wrote this in 1 Corinthians. That people took their singleness, they took that time that would have been used spending on somebody else, but they were able to use it for something greater in God's kingdom, with a greater purpose. So then, he who marries his fiancée does well, but he who does not marry will do better. Now, Paul certainly wasn't against love or marriage, but we can see that his focus was on something much higher and greater. That his life was all about serving the Lord. Where our focus, so much of our life, is about really serving ourselves. And that's a sad commentary about our life, but it is really true. Even if you're not in a relationship, we so many times are distracted by the things of this world that we take our eyes off of the Lord. We lose focus and we start thinking about the worldly things and how we really just want to please ourselves. But Paul here understood and made his life about serving Jesus and leading as many people as he could to Jesus. That was who his life was about. That was what his life was about. He was going to make a difference in this world by leading others to Jesus. And the thing was, he understood that that was the only way that we can make a real, legitimate difference in this world. We talk about being world changers, being people that make a difference in our communities. In reality, if and when we're going to make a difference, a true difference and change that's going to make a lasting impact in this world, then we have to lead other people to Jesus. There's nothing wrong with being in a relationship. And there's nothing wrong with being married. And he says there's nothing wrong with being single either. I want to get married and I want to have kids, but I also understand that not everyone is going to have that opportunity in life. And that's okay. And so students, I would encourage you guys to do this as a piece of advice. Pray. Pray that God would lead in your daily life. Pray specifically for that, because dating is hard. Being single is hard. Being in a relationship is hard. But you need to be at peace that He would lead that right person in your life at the right time. Because even the right person at the wrong time is the wrong person. And certainly the wrong person at the wrong time is going to be the wrong person. And there is no such thing as the wrong person at the right time, because the wrong person is always going to be wrong. So until that right time comes, keep your focus on Jesus. Keep serving Him and strive to do your best, whether it's in school, in the classroom, whether it's in sports or drama or music or at work, wherever it may be, whatever it is that you're doing. I want you to use that part of your life to give God honor and glory, because in all honesty, every part of our life should be giving God honor and glory. Remember, our really main verse that is for Desha Youth is Colossians chapter 3 and verse 17. It says, "And whatever you do, in word or in deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him." Don't waste your time believing you're some kind of loser, or feeling sorry for yourself, or even just being in a bad relationship just to be in a relationship because you're afraid of being single or what somebody would think of you. Those things waste time and they hurt your soul, and they can damage you in so many ways.